I wonder if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself. So introduce yourself, say where you work, and tell me a little bit about you.
My name's Cath. I work for the Wales Cooperative Centre as a lead circuit rider on a Welsh Government programme for digital inclusion.
And what does a circuit rider mean?
What are we?
Actually, what we do is business ICT advice. So we go out and advise small organisations, companies, charities to make better use of adopt or exploit ICT. So it's kind of like an IT strategy role, really. Okay. But it's a term that came from London initially. LASA developed the first sort of circuit rider programme in the UK, and it's kind of gone from there. So, yeah.
Okay, and what about you?
I am also on the same programme as Cath. I work as a circuit rider or business IT advisor. We've been on the programme now. I think it's been running 7 years. Yeah, it's been 6 years, 7 years. We're just coming to an end now in March next year. So obviously we're now thinking of our future endeavours.
So what particularly drew you to applying to go onto the ICT programme?
It matched almost perfectly the stage we were at with moving on to the next stage with the business ICT advice, with the European funding changing March next year, so the programme's coming to an end, and looking at the next steps away from there. So it was quite serendipitous because it just matched what we needed to be able to do to develop the service further.
We needed to take on a much more commercial focus, and we needed to sort of create much more a niche for what we were doing. So being able to sort of look at strategy not only within our own organisation but also be able to give that advice to other organisations. From a personal perspective, it was something I've always wanted to do. I've spent years in IT, since I was left school. I went into the IT industry, so there's been a lot of my time invested in it, but I'd sort of reached a point where I couldn't go any further because I didn't have a qualification that made sense in terms of what I actually deliver, and this just answered that bill straight away. It was exactly the right thing for what we do.
Okay, and what effect do you think it's had on you taking this programme, and in relationship to your workplace, for instance?
I think a lot more confident that what we know is actually specialist knowledge, and not everybody knows it, and even people that might have been somebody you were reluctant to take on in the past, we do know more than them.
I think it certainly changed the way in which you think about things, the way in which you approach a situation. An overview, a much more broad overview of what's needed within an organisation, the way in which I tackle problems, the way my relationships have changed with people quite dramatically. I analyse much more. I'm much more critical about a situation than I ever was before. I evaluate more, which I didn't before. So it's made a huge impact in terms of who I am personally, and it's also made a big impact in terms of how good I can be for other companies as well, actually looking much more in depth at what's needed rather than sort of taking it at almost a surface level, which perhaps I did before.
I know that you've been talking with Alison Berry this morning from Edinburgh Napier University about your work-based learning project. So I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about what you're doing there and how it's going.
For me, it was slightly different because I'm a sort of an external consultant to another organisation rather than doing it on my own organisation, as would normally be the case. I've done it on another organisation that was part of our client base. So my role with them has been supporting them through their own analysis process, putting together a business case for procurement of new IT equipment and new services, and moving towards a more commercial state of mind, helping them with their quality assurance and things as well. So it's been a consultative role, sort of helping them through that process, using my own research, using the modules as well as the classroom modules as a sort of a basis for research and analysis of how they behave and how mature they are as organisations. So that's it's sort of been a process of development that's just sort of stemmed from that first initial analysis, and then right the way through then to sort of working out what they need to do in order to meet the objectives that we originally agreed upon.
Okay, thank you.
Mine's pretty much business planning the service for the future. So with the move away from European funding, is looking at whether we can develop a service that will actually generate income and be commercial, that people will pay for and see the value of. We believe that this is something that we have, but it's looking at our competitors and looking at the cost analysis and looking at where we are placed in the market and whether we need to be a niche market that services the co-ops and social enterprise sector, or whether we need to move out further into other SMEs. But also whether we need to do it as part of the organisation we're already with, or whether it would be better off as a standalone business in its own right. And that's a lot of work.
What would you say to somebody else who was considering doing the course that you've nearly come to the end of, actually, haven't you?
It's been hugely beneficial. I think we've both really grown from it as well.
Yeah.
And I would say to anyone who is thinking of doing it, that just don't think about it. It's a huge opportunity. For me, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. To be able to do this whilst working full time, whilst working in that industry. Not having to sort of take a break and go into full-time study, and it's a hell of a qualification to get to without having to sort of go into a full-time study situation. So being able to do that and work and do it alongside work and actually use the work as the basis for the learning has been really, really beneficial.
Because it does help, it improves the way we work. But also, it's a massive, massive amount of work, but you learn to work smarter, work a lot smarter, so you're prioritising things and delegating things that way maybe before you'd have taken on all yourself. And it's fitting it all in, it's developing the strategies so that you can get the learning done at the same time as you're doing your full-time job anyway, and getting the two things to dovetail.
And you probably felt the same, that there's a real sense of self-improvement as you've gone along, as we've completed every stage, we've completed every coursework, what you've learnt, you've been able to sort of channel into your day-to-day activities and actually do what you do better as a result of having gone through that process.
But I think it's only when you stop and look at it that you realise you've done those things, that it is being built into the work as you go along.
And looking back at, what's just happened, looking back from last September to now, the actual sheer volume of work and stuff and research that's been completed, but it's all been directly relevant to what we do.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, one last question. Can you think of something that you really enjoyed doing during the course of the programme? So one thing that stands out that you enjoyed?
One thing that really stands out, I think for me it was the experience of becoming a student, because having never done full-time education, higher education, say full-time education, going from school straight into the world of work, I didn't do that student thing. And I remember the excitement of applying for my Sconal library access and my library card coming through, and a friend of mine taking me, who's recently gone through university, taking me to the Swansea University Library and showing me how to use the library for the first time. And that sort of, I felt like I'd achieved an enormous amount just understanding how to find things and understanding reference material, because it was always a complete mystery before. I didn't understand how anyone could do that, how anyone could find anything, how anyone could gather that information and turn it into anything useful. So having done that, you never forget those skills. It's like learning to research suddenly becomes a part of who you are. And now anything, however small a subject it is, I'm like, right, let's have a look, see what I can find out about this, comparing notes and comparing research and comparing, academic papers against things that I would normally have never even considered doing that. So that's something personally I've very much enjoyed. That experience of becoming a student of research has been really exciting.
I can't think of anything.
Sorry.
other than going on a boat trip up the river in Bristol, and I was with my two daughters. And my little boy, and all three of us had student cards.